so that we can actually get stuff rolling. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sketch Weekly. This is a weekly stream where I spend an hour explaining why I still suck at art. One of these days, that's going to be funny and not pathetic. That day is not today. Anyway, as you will recall from last week, I said I was going to spend the next several weeks going through Burne Hogarth's Drawing Dynamic Hands. Actually, let me grab that off of my shelf. Now, the first thing I did was say, we're going to go through Burne Hogarth's Drawing Dynamic Hands. And once I was done with that stream, I went off and I bought the Kindle version of Drawing Dynamic Hands so I could clip and paste all of the information out of it. So I've got all of that done in this little thing. And what I've gone through and done here is I have taken the first couple of chapters. I think it was the first 3. And I went through image by image. Was it the first 3? I think it was just the first 1. Anyway, I went through and I took all of the images and I put them into one file so I could go through them and bit by bit work on stuff. And over the course of the week, I actually did a whole bunch of working on drawing hands. And as you can see here, I went through and I went just kind of individually, bit by bit, and I did a whole bunch of stuff that you could see happening on the little screen over here. And it hasn't made a huge difference, and I haven't put as much time and energy and effort into it as I would prefer, but I'm going to be putting more into it over time, and you can see me just kind of working my way through all of this stuff as I go through each of the individual images and read through the tips and the tricks and all of that shit. And I try to put everything together. I started to do some painting-based stuff, and I went, oh no, this is not helping at all. So you saw that little splash of color, and then I went back to just plain black and white. But some of this is actually coming through, and it's going pretty well. And you can see there's some real progress being made here on this. But obviously, I'm not at a point that I'm comfortable saying, hey, I can draw hands now. Because this takes a lot of people a lot of time. And even once I can draw hands in a couple of positions, that's not really going to make a huge difference. So today, I'm going to be talking about hands, but I also need to pass along a warning that I may not be very productive over the next several weeks or months because, well, bluntly speaking, it's Starfield. I've put almost 48 hours into Starfield, and in the past couple of days, that's basically every waking moment that I had available to be playing games over the last 3 days. So yeah, it's been out for like, how long has it been out? It's been out for about 55, 60 hours, and I've spent approximately 75% of that time playing it, and like not even sleeping or eating or getting anything done really, because Starfield. I've been waiting 8 years for this game. This is a big deal. This is like huge. And then oh, what is it? I think it's like 2 weeks from tomorrow is the 10-year anniversary of Grand Theft Auto Online, which that's amazing. So yeah, that's a huge thing, and I'm blown away by the things that are. Are we playing this? Oh yeah, one of my friends is playing right now. But yes, I have a friend of mine playing Starfield right now. And so here's something that's been bugging me. The community around this game, well, right now it's not really reflective of the community, because right now you have the people who bought the premium edition who can actually play the game right now. And you have the people who bought the standard edition or who haven't bought anything yet, and they can't play until the 6th. And they are stamping their feet and being very, very upset about not being able to play the game yet. And here's the thing that really gets me about it is even the people that are playing it have been complaining that apparently the future being socially progressive and woke offends them. We do have a conservative faction, a bunch like worshippers of a great snake of some sort. I haven't spent a lot of time dealing with them. It's House Maroon, I think, is the name of it, but you know, they're basically space Nazis, and people are really mad that you get to choose your pronouns in this game. And they're really mad that so many people in positions of power are women. And so many people in general are not white. And I'm just like, none of these people seem to understand anything about the direction society is going. We're not converging on going back to the days of Sparta. You know, we're moving toward a far more socially progressive society. And it's time to just face the music and put up with that. You know, I don't care whether you like it or not. It's the way things are going to be. But anyway, let's not belabor that. Let's instead talk about bullshit like how awesome the game is. I really do enjoy Starfield. It's a similar feel to Skyrim. And it has more of a Skyrim feel than Fallout 4 does, but obviously there are guns, so you have kind of a Fallout 4 feel, and there are jetpacks, so you get that whole thing going on, but there's no power armor, at least I haven't run into any yet. And what I see a lot of people complaining about is they go, you can't really travel in space. Well, no, you can't, because as some of us know from playing Elite Dangerous, that takes hours, and it's not fun. It's fucking boring. So, so they cut that part out. I'm rather glad they did. And I don't know. I feel like the missions are. I think the writing and the dialogue is on par with Fallout 4. I don't think that Starfield is a dramatic leap forward in writing or drama or dialogue. And I think a lot of the voice actors are just like new to this or not that good, because you remember in Skyrim and Fallout 4, most of the voice actors were the same. So it was like you talk to Nick Valentine, and it's the guy who it's the what's his name, like Belfazar or whatever it is. Belphegor, that's it. It's Belphegor from the shop in Whiterun. who in turn is Mercer Frey from the Thieves Guild. And that's just, it's kind of immersion breaking because you keep running into the same people all the time. And it seems like they hired a lot more people for this one. So there's a lot more voice actors who have not worked with Bethesda before, may not have worked at all before, and they're not very good. Is kind of the problem. But yeah, that's fine. I'm not gonna complain too much about that. And no, I don't want the airbrush. Plain old brush. No, I don't want. I want the regular brush. There we go. So first of all, let's go over this. The upper and lower arm. This is interesting to me that this is where Hogarth decided to start out, is with the upper and lower arm. And he kind of identified this rhythm to the upper and lower arm, where here's your tricep right here, and you've got this tendon that comes down, and you've got this kind of horseshoe shape right here. He kind of went, okay, that kind of dips in like this. And that works. And then at the elbow, you get this other kind of strip. So you've got this little strip here and a little strip here. And then it kind of bumps out, and then the strip goes up along. And this is sort of the tricep around that. So you have this kind of profile like this, and then there's your lower arm there. And then, of course, in the front, you've got your bicep. And then there's your forearm right there. That's that's an interesting way to go about things, and he makes a big deal about the rhythm. Like, here's the rhythm of the upper arm here, and here's the bicep, and here's the tricep, and here's the elbow, and here's over here is the muscle of the forearm. You've got kind of this thing going on. And you've got this sort of undulating rhythm that goes on all the way down the arm, and kind of clarifies that. And he also clarifies, when you move on past this, down here, when you come down here, he talks about the contraposed masses. He does this thing where he runs sort of pegs through the various joints. And I've seen people talk about this before, and the way they talk about it is like it's a chain, okay? It's like, here's the chain of the shoulder, and here's the chain of the upper arm, and here's the chain of the lower arm, and then here's the chain of the hand. But the chain of the hand doesn't really work on that. But the thing is, if you think of it, if you just go, these are oriented at right angles to one another, as a general rule, then that gives you a sort of a shorthand to think about how everything is constructed and how it all fits together. But I've been looking at that, and I've been thinking about how all of these directional elements fit together. And while I found this interesting, I did not find it particularly useful in improving my work. So I don't know how you would go about using this to improve your work. I really don't. So this is a thing that I don't really get. I kind of did some work on this, and I sort of thought a little bit about, here's the elbow, and here's the forearm right here, and just looking at how he draws stuff and how it fits together. This really made a difference here. the hand kind of slopes here. There's a downward drop in the forearm. When you bend your wrist, there's this sort of downward slope here, because when you look at the anatomy of the wrist, there are all of these little bones, okay? And when those bones, when you bend, those bones kind of buckle a little bit right here. So you've got like all of these bones in the wrist that are just kind of conforming here. You've got the forearm coming out this way. You've got the hand that is coming out this way. And in between those, okay, here's the top of your palm, here's the top of your forearm. And then all of the wrist bones are kind of falling into this little sort of slope that goes in there. So you have that kind of thing going on there. And that's there. There's the side of the arm over here and the side of the hand over here. And that kind of drop here, that drop at the wrist, that's an interesting little point of realism, and I was looking at that. Then we've got underarm curves. This is something that I've been thinking about a lot. When you have an arm that is bent, there's a curve underneath of the upper arm, and there's a curve underneath of the lower arm. But these never kind of go in opposite directions. There's always an upward slope, and if it curves downward, that's the hand. So there's kind of, here's one part of the arm right here, of an upward slope. You have this kind of roundness to it. And he really kind of goes into that. I don't know how to explain this very well. It just all follows this same curve. Okay, there's a natural curve to the arm, sort of a gestural automatic curve. So it's like if you draw it out this way, it looks one particular way, and then if you drop it down and you have it bent slightly differently, you have it bent over this way, you still get that upward sweep. If it's not as bent, you still have that upward sweep. You never have a backward sweep. The elbow can't bend this way, can't get that sort of thing. It's always bent this way, and that's because of the olecranon. On the forearm bones, okay, you've got the radius right here, and you've got the ulna right here, and this has this kind of projection off of the back. Okay? So when you unbend your arm, that little projection on the back whacks up against the back of that bone, and it's not going to bend any further because it can't. You'd have to break your arm to bend it further. So you've got that little bit there, and that's kind of when you look at a bent arm, you could sort of see there's this squared off bit here. There's this squared off part of the elbow, and this right here, this little knob, that is the olecranon right there. Okay, that's what smacks up against the back of the humerus and won't let your elbow bend backwards. So that's sort of what forces this constant upward sweep. You can't get the opposite sweep. That never happens with the arm. And that's a useful thing to understand. But really what starts to become important is when you start getting into the palm wedge, where the wrist flattens at the end of the forearm, and the palm kind of, here's the wrist right here, and then the palm comes outward and it's thick back here. Like here's your wrist and it's square. And your hand comes out of there and it becomes thinner as you go forward, okay? Back here, it's good and fat. And up here, it's much thinner. So you have this sort of wedge shape like that. But on top of this, it's convex. It's not just flat straight across, okay? You've got this kind of thickness here, and then the hand is curved, almost like a melon wedge. I've heard it called that. I've actually heard Hogarth call it that. They actually say that in the book. But it has this curve to it, okay? It's not just like flat. You can make it flat, but if you just relax it, it's like a melon wedge. And then on top of that, because these two fingers here, because these two fingers are a little bit longer and they're a little bit heavier, they tend to dip down below. If you just hold out your hand and relax it, those two fingers will dip lower because they're heavier. Your forefinger is stronger than your ring finger. And they just kind of dip down like that. And your little finger is typically flying off doing its own thing. That's a big element of animation, is you have all of the fingers together except one that is off doing its own thing. So you can think of it, you can draw the hand as like a mitten, but then you just kind of take one finger and make it do its own thing. You distinguish the individual fingers, but you can draw the whole thing like, here's your thumb, here's this mitten of the hand, and these three fingers we're going to keep together, and then we're just going to stick that finger out and have it do its own thing. And that's a cheap and simple way to make hands look better. But the important thing here is you have this kind of slope. You're thicker back there than you are here. And that's an important aspect of this. You also kind of broaden out. As you know, the wrist kind of tapers in, and then the hand broadens out. There. So here everything's very packed tight together, and then as everything spreads out, it also thins and arcs. So at the end, it's kind of like this, and at the back, it's kind of like that. So it spreads outward and bends. Less bent back here. On top of this, this was kind of an aha moment that I ran into. They're talking about the wrist and palm connection. This is an important element. This part of your forearm right here, okay, outside of your elbow, right there, comes up, and no matter how your forearm turns, this plane of the forearm is always coplanar with the wrist. It never, you can't turn your wrist. What you're actually turning is you're turning the entire arm. You can feel this. You can feel the way the bones move inside. Okay, right here you've got two different bones inside your arm. You've got the radius, which is up here on top, and you've got the ulna, which is down here on the bottom, okay? Now, the ulna doesn't do anything except rotate. If you put your hand on it and you feel, all it does is just kind of rotate. It doesn't actually move much of anywhere. But the radius up here rotates around it. It rotates around that bone. And you get this thing where right here, the two bones are side by side, but when you turn your wrist, they cross over. You can see that the ulna is now on the top, the radius is on the bottom, but the connection is still here. This is still straight from end to end, and it's the radius that is moved. It's crossed over diagonally. And when it does that crossover, okay, it always takes that side of the hand with it. So you can't look at your palm and the back of your forearm at the same time. That's not a possible thing to do. You can't do that. And that's kind of important. But the palm scoop, this is important. Here you could see here you can see that sort of melon slice thing that I'm talking about. But this isn't right at the wrist. Right at the wrist is pretty solid. This is a little bit farther along, okay? And the important thing here, this is the way I look at it anyway. You have that scoop at the back, but you also have these relatively thick muscle masses, especially around the thumb, and those muscle masses wrap around here, and they give you this kind of block and arc construction, okay? And what Hogarth is talking about here more than anything else is you get this big mass here and a slightly smaller mass here, and then you've got a mass here. And that creates a kind of scooping rhythm where you've got big mass, small mass, and then up here, everything is kind of held together. You get this little triangle that happens in there, and that's explicit in the next one, in the Palmer structures, where he talks about the thenar eminence of the hypothenar plateau. Some people call this the thenar eminence. The thenar eminence is technically this bit here. The thenar prominence is right here. And that's all just like this huge amount of muscle that's wrapped around the base of your thumb. The hypothenar plateau over here, well, it doesn't need to do much of anything. It is mostly there to pad your palm and to provide some strength as you're gripping things, to pull the sides of the hand together. And then you've got the palm ridge right here, which he spends some time talking about. And this is where, I believe this is where we talk about the palm wedge triangle. Yes. Okay, so the palm wedge triangle, you can see here that he's got this bit, and he's got kind of a blocked out series of shapes here, okay? So what you've got is big square here, big square here, and then as that moves forward, these squares both get narrower at the end. This one faster than this one. And then at the end of those, you have, they've kind of shifted to the side. So you get this kind of big block, big block. And then here is your little palm ridge, okay? And all of these are up underneath of the hand. So what we've got is this situation where everything just kind of comes together like this. So you got this kind of... And then layered on top of that, you have the arc of the fingers, okay? So this is more or less flat. This scoops in, and layered on top of this, you have that arc where the fingers are placed. So your cross section is kind of like this. And there's your thumb sticking off to the side. And then along here, you have this kind of... Here's that muscle getting thinner, and here's that muscle getting thinner. Here's your palm ridge, little knuckle pad underneath. And then on top of that, you have the bones themselves, which are in an arching form. Because they're laid out pretty close together next to the wrist, but then as they come farther down, there's muscle in between these. And that muscle is thinner closer in because you don't really need it. And you don't really need it because you've got all of this muscle here. So really the structure of how everything fits together is, it's really kind of fascinating and cool. And it's fun to look at this stuff. As you might guess, I enjoy it. And let's see, where are we at this point? Palm wedge triangle, the thumb triangle. This is interesting about the thumb. If you think about the hand as like just these 4 bits right here, and you've got your forefinger, middle finger, your ring finger, little finger, there, okay? The thumb sticks out of the side right here. And it comes out here. Here's your forefinger, and alongside of that, there's another bone, and then only 2 joints on that particular finger. But it sticks off to the side because there's this huge muscle holding it there. And you get kind of this structure, and those are arched right there. So you've got kind of your thumb, and then you got 1, 2, 3, 4 for the fingers, and those come out like so. And the whole thing about the thumb is the thumb moves in very different ways because it mostly moves in this kind of arc right here. Okay? It can move outward, but it primarily moves in this arc. There's also a limitation. Your thumb and forefinger, or your thumb and little finger, can touch, but they can't go much beyond each other. Okay, not to the sides anyway. It's very hard to put your little finger on this side of your thumb, and you certainly can't just move them past each other. And that's a limitation to the dynamic range of motion that can be important to remember. Now, palm curvature. This is a really exaggerated version of what I'm talking about here. Here's that big square on one side, here's that big square on the other side, and here's that arc. And then here is your wrist. And you've got that arc going on there, but it's kind of, this is the end of your arm, and you've got this kind of thing going on underneath of it. Those little additional blocks of the muscle of the hand. And that was kind of interesting to me because I never really thought about it that way. One of the things that I need to really think about is the planes of the hand. And really like where these planes meet and how they change in relation to one another, you know? And that's very important in getting them shaded properly and in getting proportions correct and getting the right view on them. Hogarth also has this interesting thing he does where he just he does these little dimply bits in the fingers right here. And this is a reflection of the underlying structure, but it's also kind of weird, and I don't really see that in a lot of other people's work. And I'm not sure whether that's something I want to go out of my way to include in my work, or just something that I want to be aware of in his work and not necessarily duplicate. Then this was really very helpful. I did a whole lot of drawings based on this. The rod and ball forms, and this structure of the hand is really, really useful. To think of the hand like this and go, okay, here's the thumb sticking off to the side here. And you've got, here are your individual bones that come up the hand, and then here's the thumb coming up here. And then you've got the thumb coming off the side, and just kind of working from the concept of here's the ball at one end, and here's this rod sticking out from the ball. And you've got another ball at the back of the next segment, and so on and so forth. And then at the end, it just kind of terminates. So you've got this sort of roundness to it. So right there, that kind of thing. And thinking about it in terms of there's a cylindrical form, and then you've got these individual rods that come out from that. And if you just think about it like this, that has helped me sort of think a little bit more about how the hand is constructed, and you just kind of have these bits, and you draw finger before knuckle, and then you draw a little ring to go around the knuckle. There's the finger up to the knuckle, ring around it, and then there's the back of the hand right there. And then you can think about, you know, kind of how that's shaded and how that works. One of the things that I've been thinking about is the top of the finger is basically flat, and then the bottom of the finger is very round, okay? That's kind of flat and bony, and this is kind of round. And this may kind of have a stretchy bit, so there's kind of this profile to the kind of that profile on the top, and then it stretches around and comes around like this. And you've got this kind of right here is where it pulls tight around the edge, and right here is where you've got this little, there's kind of a little fat deposit in there, and then inside of here there's a bone, and the finger bones are kind of square, funnily enough. And underneath of that, you've got this fleshy pad here, protect that bottom of the finger, and you've got fleshy pads out on the sides over here that protect the sides of the finger, and then you've got just a little bit up here to protect the bone, not a whole lot. So you've got this sort of square structure, little bit of fat, little bit of fat, a lot of fat, teeny bit of fat, and then that all has skin around it. Okay? And that, when you think about it that way, that kind of gives you an understanding of how the skin is going to work when you bend the finger. You bend the finger down this way, and all of this creases and tries to push underneath. It's like the double eyelid surgery that they get in Korea. In order to get the eyelid to not, so you've got this eye socket with the eyeball in it, okay? And Korean eye sockets are very tight and very angular. And because they're very tight and very angular, the eye's sitting in there like this. And when the eye tries to open, the eyelid is down like this, you try to lift it, it can't fit up in there, so the eyelid bunches up, okay? And because the eyelid bunches up, the eye won't open all the way. So it looks like they're squinting because the eye literally can't open all the way. You've got this bunch of fat up here. And what they'll do is they'll do a surgery where they'll take the eyelid and they'll say, okay, we're going to pull a strip of fat from the back of your eyelid so that when you open your eye, it'll fold right here. And you'll get that kind of Western thing where Western brows tend to be rounder, like this. And when the eyelid opens, it dimples in right here. So instead of being all bunched up, it bunches up into the crease here. And by bunching up into the crease, instead of bunching up on the outside, it allows the eye to open farther because there's more space in here for all of that fat at the back of the eyelid to go. This is absolutely not a racist thing. It's just a structural thing. And if you understand that, then you know that when you bend your finger, this bit right here pushes up underneath. As you bend the finger, it pushes up underneath of the skin at the next one down, okay? So you've got this kind of skin pushing in and skin pushing in, okay? This is a side view here. And that's kind of how those creases fit together. And that makes it easier to draw these things from the side. Not that I am especially good at it, but you know, it's a thing. And then we've got the rhythms of finger forms. I never really got to rhythms of finger forms. And you look at how Hogarth draws hands, and they're kind of exaggerated and awful. Just kind of, they are what they are. He draws very kind of knobbly hands, very masculine. And that's something I'm going to have to work on, because I need to draw a lot of feminine hands. And Hogarth doesn't really draw a lot of feminine hands. But here's kind of one side of the fingers there, and here's the other side of the fingers there. Sort of this big knobbly knuckle. And he does these very kind of exaggerated hand poses because he's showing off the range of motion of the human hand. Hogarth, more than any other artist I've ever studied, is absolutely in love with the human body and the way that it's structured and the way that it moves. And he thinks it's just the most beautiful and fantastic thing ever. And it really comes through in his work. And that's one of the reasons that I really like working from his instructional materials, is he's not going, these are the things you need to do to get to a place. He's going, I love this part of it. I love the way that the human body moves. I love the way that the human body is constructed. He has this real deep, passionate love for the human body as a machine, and it really comes through in everything that he does. And I love that. I think that's amazing. And then you've got symmetry of forms, where he talks about from the top of the hand. You can't really see this from the front, but you have these beautiful symmetries of how everything fits together. And they're very symmetrical from finger to finger. And that's an important thing to him. He loves that sort of stuff, symmetry. And yeah, so that's the first bit of Hogarth. And I'm gonna do some more work on Hogarth this coming week, but I don't know how much I'm gonna do, because God damn it, what is wrong with this shit over here? I'm not sure how much work I'm gonna do on it, because Starfield. I have waited so long for a new Bethesda game. It's been 8 years, and it's amazing. It's incredible. I love it. There are a lot of fantastic things that that they've done in Starfield, and like my favorite so far is that I was walking around inside of town, and I noticed that I could climb on top of stuff, and I could get on top of the city wall. And I looked over the city wall, and there's this huge drop, and I thought, well, I'm wearing a jetpack. I just jump and fire my jetpack shortly before I land. I should survive this. Now, you can't do this in Fallout 4 and in Skyrim, because individual cities are in their own individual, what they call cells, and you have to go through a designated portal between one cell and the next. There has to be a transition from one cell to another. But I just jumped down from the wall of the city and went wandering off, and I was out in the wilderness, and it was seamless. There was no transition at all. I just left the city and wandered off into the wilderness, turned around and came back, and I could wander back into the city wherever I wanted. And that was amazing. I loved the way that fit together, and it's just so different from the hoops I have to jump through in other Bethesda games. They've improved so much, and a lot of it's quality of life stuff. I've also had virtually no bugs. I did have one problem where they say you need an SSD to install the game, but it's not just an SSD. It has to be an NVMe M.2 SSD that plugs into your motherboard, because the issue is transfer speed. If you use something that's connected to a SATA 3 interface, like an external solid-state hard drive, it can't transfer data to main system memory faster than 600 megabytes per second. Whereas the NVMe drive hooked onto your motherboard is using part of the PCIe bus, and it goes up to 20 gigabytes a second. So it's like 35 times as fast, which is just ridiculous. And if you try to run it on something that's going through your SATA 3 controller, you're going to have a bad time. I did. I had to move it onto my main motherboard's drive. So yeah, that's where that's sitting. But I'm really enjoying Starfield, and I strongly recommend that if you enjoy Skyrim and if you enjoy Fallout 4, that you get Starfield. But it's not a space game. It's a science fiction game that takes place on lots of different planets. You don't really fly anywhere or spend any time traveling through space. All of your time is spent more or less on the planets or fighting in the area around a planet, which, when you think about it, makes a whole lot of sense. And I think that's an improvement. I mean, Elite Dangerous is a cool game, and I enjoy it, but holy fucking shit, do you spend hours just traveling from one place to another. And that's ridiculous. And if you just want to jump in and play the game for 45 minutes, you have to be able to do more than just get from point A to point B, you know? And I don't think that I don't think it improves the game to spend any significant time worrying about how do you make travel more fun when you're traveling through empty space with nothing in it. But anyway, that's where I'm going to leave things here. Make sure you do the little YouTube dance, like, comment, subscribe, all of that kind of happy horse shit. And, you know, I'll be back next week to talk more about hands and maybe, I don't know, maybe have some insight, but I will definitely spend an outrageous amount of time playing Starfield the coming week. I guess, you know, I might have something to say about hands, but I'll certainly have a whole lot to say about Starfield. So, I don't know. Maybe this is just going to be a Starfield channel for a couple of weeks. Yeah, but yeah, that's where we are. So again, thank you for stopping by, and okay, bye.